Steel City. Is everybody ready to go? Let's proclaim the greatest radio show.
Here we go, fans. Our last fantasy football wide receiver segment for the year 2014. As usual, I got Jay Dash, Big Easy, and Jeff Q in the studio. Thank you guys for sitting in. Thanks for sticking it out all year. Dash, you put in more work than anybody I know on fantasy football, so I want to thank you especially. I know you hate doing all the research, but you do a damn fine job, sir. Damn fine.
I quit after this segment.
Let's jump into this wide receiver segment.
All right, Tier 1. ODB.
Please believe.
Antonio Brown, Julio Jones, A.J. Green. Both of them are questionable, but they are expected to play. Demaryius Thomas, Kelvin Johnson, Jordy Nelson, Des Bryant, who could see limited playing time, Elshon Jeffrey, and Emmanuel Sanders, who is questionable, and his status is uncertain right now.
I know you don't know Megatron's numbers like exactly off the top of your head, but you got to say he's having probably a down year for him.
The entire offense in Detroit's having a down year.
The whole city's having a down year, my friend, except for Eminem. Eminem, follow us on Twitter at bet_the_spread.
He made a big announcement last night when I was watching the interview, though.
On the interview. Yeah, folks, if you haven't seen the interview and you want to get some breaking Eminem news, you got to check that out online. What about Tier 2? We got T.Y. Hilton, Randall Cobb, Mike Evans, Roddy White, Kelvin Benjamin, and Jeremy Maclin. My biggest question mark here is Roddy White. He's questionable. He's going up against Carolina. They do give up the 15th most points to fantasy wide receivers. White had double-digit points in PPR in his last 8 games. He had 5 touchdowns over those 8 games. In Week 11 against Carolina, White had 8 catches for 75 yards and a touch. This poor bastard seems to have been hurt pretty much the last 2 or 3 years straight.
Yeah, he is injury prone, but he does play most of the time, and when he does, he's been getting it done, so I keep rolling with him. My biggest question mark is T.Y. Hilton. He didn't play last week. He has a great matchup this week, but again, even though Coach Pagano said his starters are playing, that doesn't mean they're playing a lot.
Believe it. Playing only means 1 snap.
Tier 3, Golden Tate, Kenny Stills, Vincent Jackson, Jarvis Landry, and Mike Wallace.
Easy. What do you think about your boy Mike Wallace?
I'm telling you, I like him.
You love that dude.
Lately, he's been doing good. He had 11 targets in Week 13 against the Jets. And
6 catches for 69 yards, I believe, in that game.
He's doing good over the last 2 games, man. I think he's poised to get some points.
He just needs a better quarterback.
Well, Tannehill did it big last week. This is a great matchup for him. The Jets can stop the run, but not the pass. But who I like in that passing game even more is Jarvis Landry. He's had at least 6 receptions in each of his last 5 games and 8 straight double-digit fantasy performances. He had 8 for 68 at the Jets in Week 13. This is the more consistent receiver in Miami.
Wallace has always been more of a big play guy.
Yeah. Tier 4, Deshaun Jackson,
Thug Life,
Marcus Colston,
Gangster,
and then 2 questionable guys, LaFell and Edelman. Are they going to play? And if so, how much?
Are you saying they're questionable, like...
Not injury. Well, Edelman is questionable with a concussion, but he is expected to be cleared to play, but that doesn't mean he's going to play.
I thought you were just calling out their character like they were shady bastards.
No, Edelman's a shady bastard.
All right.
I gotta say, out of this group, I like Marquez Colston.
You never know with that guy.
Yeah, he's been great lately, though.
Yeah, he has a great matchup this week. Tampa Bay lets up the 6th most to fantasy wide receivers. And like you said, Kill,
PPR.
He's been doing it in PPR the last 5 weeks since Brandon Cooks went down. Both him and Stills have been playing well, and Colston has been very consistent since then.
Tier 5, Josh Gordon, Charles Johnson, DeAndre Hopkins, and Torrey Smith.
Yeah, Torrey Smith, he scored 2 touchdowns last week. And he had 12 targets, 5 catches for 59 yards. He looks to be healthy again, and he was on fire before his injury. He was scoring touchdowns every week, sometimes multiple touchdowns. Yahoo and ESPN are saying don't play him. I'm saying why not? He did it last week, and he's been doing it the second half of the season, so I play him.
Josh Gordon's an interesting play. Connor Shaw is playing quarterback for Cleveland this week. Nobody knows anything about this guy. He was on the practice squad. We don't know if he has a big arm, if he's an accurate passer. What if they just tell Gordon to run straight and tell Shaw to throw it up in the air? Because what do they got to lose? They have no playoff hopes. Their 2 quarterbacks that were their starters are both hurt. It honestly could happen. I could see Gordon have a huge game because Shaw's going to panic at some point and just chuck it up in the air to the best player on their team.
And let's not forget, Baltimore can stop the run with the best of them, but they cannot stop the pass at all.
Shaw to Gordon, my sleeper of the week.
Tier 6, Anquan Bolden, Eddie Royal,
Eric Decker the Halls. Gotta love it.
and Doug Baldwin.
Doug, I'm going Baldwin. Rob Lowe's going bald too. Did you guys know that? Anquan Bolden is going up against Arizona, who give up the 13th most points to fantasy wide receivers. Bolden had 7 catches and 61 yards on 9 targets last week after 3 straight single-digit fantasy efforts. He had 6 receptions for 36 yards at Arizona in week 3. Kaepernick, he's been garbage pretty much all year. He got it done with his legs last week, so he might have put up some fantasy points. But I'd be scared to play anybody he actually has to throw the ball to, because I'm pretty sure he just forgot how to throw, and he should be in the Pirates bullpen.
Yeah, really, if there's one receiver you can even think about, it has to be Bolden, and that's it. Eddie Royal, with Keenan Allen out last week, he did it big. 10 catches, 94 yards, and a touchdown against SF, who's a pretty good pass defense. 19 catches, 175 yards, and 2 touchdowns over his last 2 road games. Him, Malcolm Floyd, and another guy I'm going to talk about later, Inman, all got it done last week, and they could all be decent plays again this week.
The 49ers, they're a bunch of thugs, dude. Harbaugh's a thug. People hate him. Kaepernick's a douche. Alden Smith has, like, assault weapons. He's all thug life. Ray McDonald's raping women. Like, what's going on out in San Francisco? I thought they were supposed to be nice out there and like rainbows.
Who knows, man? California's an evil place.
I'm telling you, it's a cesspool out there.
Tier 7, Steve Smith Sr., Sammy Watkins, Malcolm Floyd, and Andre Johnson.
Is Andre Johnson healthy?
Not completely.
He's got a decent matchup going up against Jacksonville. He has 10-plus targets in 4 of his last 5 games, including 13 last week, but just 6 for 65 yards and just 4 for 17 yards at Jacksonville in Week 14. They've had a lot of problems at quarterback in Houston. They're down to Case Keenum, I think, now.
Yep.
He played all right a few times in their offense last year. He has a little bit of a rapport with Johnson. I mean, if you have any of these guys, he's probably the one I'm going to play out of them.
Yeah, he's not a terrible play, but like I said, Malcolm Floyd got it done last week with Allen out, so I kind of like Malcolm Floyd this week. He had 10 targets last week, and he scored a touchdown, 50 yards. He's been pretty consistent all season. He hasn't put up the big points, but he can get you 10 to 15.
Tier 8, Greg Jennings, Ruben Randall, Dante Moncrief, and Kendall Wright. Jeff, we all know Greg Jennings is straight gangster, and he puts the team on his back. What do you think about his matchup against Chicago, whose defense is just terrible?
I gotta like this matchup, Jim. You know, I mean, I'm a Greg Jennings fan. He does put the team on his back. And I think he does it again here.
He had 4 TDs in his last 5 games and 8 double-digit fantasy efforts in his last 9 games. And we all know Easy likes to live that PPR lifestyle. So in a PPR league, Greg Jennings is your man.
Yeah, he's a solid number 3. He's not going to put up the huge points, but I definitely like Greg Jennings because he almost guarantees you double digits.
Dude, I bet you he breaks his leg and gets a touchdown on like a 90-yard pass.
You know, a nice little gamble, too, might be Ruben Randall. You know, playing Philly, giving up the 5th most fantasy points to wide receivers this season. You know, he's coming off a 6 for 132-yard, 1 touchdown performance.
Yeah,
So-
he actually dropped off in the previous 4 weeks before that, and they weren't even throwing him the ball. Early in the season, he was getting 10 or more targets every game, and then all of a sudden, ODB stepped up, and then Preston Parker took over the role of Ruben Randall for a little bit. But again, Ruben Randall last week, like you said, he came up big, and I liked him all season. I don't even know why they stopped throwing him the ball.
Well,
Eli sucks.
with defenses focusing more on ODB, you know, I mean, this might be Randall's time to get it going.
ODB might become my favorite wide receiver because he's got a badass nickname.
And let's not forget, Indy might sit some of their players, some of their wide receivers, running backs, whatever. Dante Moncrief might get some extra playing time this week. Tier 9, Marquess Wilson, Marquise Lee, Larry Fitzgerald, and James Jones.
My man Larry Fitzgerald, he's had a rough year this year. Problems at quarterback, he's been a little dinged up. He's going up against San Fran to give up the 5th fewest points to fantasy wide receivers. 30 targets over his last 3 games, but no touchdowns and no more than 34 yards in any game during that span. He hasn't even scored in a game since week 8.
Yeah, it's been a
That's
tough season
crazy.
for
He
Fitz.
needs to get out of Arizona to finish his career.
Go to
Needs come-
Pittsburgh.
yeah, needs to
I would
come here.
love if Larry came to Pittsburgh.
Bro.
Could you imagine him, Antonio Brown, and Martavis Bryant?
With Heath Miller as a tight end, I would absolutely love that.
Well, Heath ain't going to last much longer.
No.
Jay Cutler's back at quarterback. Marquez Wilson, he's starting again. Brandon Marshall's done for the season. He had 7 catches for 66 last week. Cutler can always give his wide receivers big games, even though he's not a winning quarterback.
He's terrible.
Tier 10, Alan Hearns, Pierre Garçon, Kenny Britt, and Dontrell Inman.
Kenny Britt's going against Seattle. They give up nothing to wide receivers. Britt's had 14 catches for 168 yards on 20 targets over the last 2 games, but just 3 touchdowns on the season and none since week 11. I kept talking him up all year. He made me look like a moron, so bleep you, Britt. I hope Richard Sherman punches you right in the throat.
Yeah, this is too tough of a matchup to trust him, but he has got it done the past 2 weeks and looked better than Stedman Bailey, so there is worse options. I like this Dontrell Inman. With Keenan Allen out in San Diego, like I said, Royal Floyd and Inman all played well. They were all productive. Inman only played the second half, and he came up with 7 catches for 79 yards on 9 targets, and he looked good overall. He actually looked better than Royal and Floyd to me. He made some nice catches. I think his dude's going to have a big week. Tier 11, Robert Woods, Michael Crabtree, Andre Holmes, Martavis Bryant, and Cecil Shorts.
Cecil, eat my shorts. You think Bart Simpson's a fan of Cecil Shorts? Jeff, you love Bart Simpson.
Yeah, he would certainly eat his shorts.
Cecil's going up against Houston. They give up the most points to fantasy wide receivers. He had 35 targets over the last 4 games, but just 14 catches for $129 to show for it. He hasn't scored since week 3. 2 catches for 3 yards against Houston in week 14, so it's looking like it's going to be a long day for Cecil. You never know, though. He could come up big and get redemption.
Yeah, they can get burnt by the pass for sure. Tier 12, Harry Douglas, Albert Wilson, Jordan Matthews, and Paul Richardson.
I heard Harry Douglas is actually questionable also.
Yeah, he's questionable. Jones and White are both expected to play too, but even when they both play, he's been okay recently. He might not put up big points, but he's still been involved in the offense and targeted enough to get you some fantasy points.
Who's Paul Richardson? That dude sounds like he should be an accountant.
That's Seattle's, I'd say, number 2 receiver, I guess. He has a good matchup this week. He put back-to-back double-digit fantasy efforts together. It's another good matchup. Like I said, he had 8 for 82 and a touchdown over his past 2 games. He's been playing better than Jermaine Kearse. I still like Baldwin better, but Richardson's been involved.
Tier 13. Dwayne Tybo on it. Andrew Hawkins and Riley, I'm a racist, Cooper.
Yeah, Bo and Hawkins are both questionable. But Riley Cooper, he had 2 touchdowns last week on 7 targets, but he's really done nothing over the past 2 months, so it's really, really hard to trust him. I still like Jordan Matthews better, even though Cooper had the bigger game last week.
Cooper hasn't done a whole lot this year at all, and especially with Foles wasn't nearly as good as he was last year, and then butt fumbles in a quarterback now. You can't really expect a whole lot out of Philadelphia wide receivers.
Tier 14, Michael Floyd, Stedman Bailey, Danny Amendola, Chris Hogan, and Mohamed Sanu.
Ramendola, is this the first time I've seen his name pop up on your list, or have I just not paid enough attention to you?
He was there very early in the season, but Edelman sat last week. He's not 100% sure to play this week. Even if they do play their starters, they might not play long. He had 8 for 63 on 11 targets in Edelman's place last week. So I expect them to be involved again this week for sure.
Same thing with Chris Hogan, brother.
Tier 15, Nate Washington, Hakeem Nicks, Reggie Wayne, and Terrence Williams.
Poor Reggie Wayne, he's going to need surgery on his tricep in the offseason. He's been useless pretty much for the last 5 weeks. You hate to see a guy who played so well for so long and it was never hurt. Last year it was the ACL. This year it's a triceps. sorry, Reggie. You know, the time of year, a holiday of giving. I'm going to give you my condolences because I feel bad. You've been the real OG out there in Indianapolis for the last couple years, and it sucks to see you be beat up like this.
It is a good matchup, but yeah, like you said, he needs surgery. So
yeah, it was more of a shout out to Reggie Wayne.
Yeah,
than tell you to play.
the Colts don't even need to play their players really. So why play someone that's hurt when
Right.
you're going to need him in the playoffs at some point?
Yes.
Even if he's not going to be a big part of your playoff.
He could come up
hopes.
with a big third down
Yeah,
catch.
you
Something
need
like
Reggie
that.
Wayne.
You
So
need
I'm
him out
guessing
there.
that's tying into the fantasy value of Hakeem Nicks this week.
Yeah, Hakeem Nicks, he's usually not on my list, but he did have 9 catches for 72 last week, and he probably will get more playing time. But by the time he does, will Andrew Luck even be in?
Yeah, you would think that he'd probably end up being their number one receiver with Wayne being hurt and Hilton being possibly hurt still, and you know
Well, they
don't
got
wanna bang
Dante
him up.
Moncrief too.
Oh yeah, well they got that Frenchman. I don't know. I might throw it in. I might
Moncrief.
throw it in Nick a little bit more.
Then there's Wes Welker. I'll put him at tier 16 for fun.
He returns punts. You never know. He might break one.
And Percy Harvin, he's not expected to play, so he's not in this
I
list.
think Percy Harvin, we should only talk about him when he is expected to play. Block that dude. He's garbage.
Yeah, take some idle.
I was always a fan of him, but he is hard a lot.
Yeah, bleep him. Want to thank you fans for listening all season. Hopefully we helped you out, win some games, made you have a little bit of fun, make you laugh. Easy, want to thank you sitting in for all these fantasy segments. Dash, I want to thank you for doing all the research.
Good work.
Jeff, great special guest host. Fans, you can keep following us on Twitter at bet_the_spread. Any fantasy questions you have in the off season, feel free to hit us up. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to that YouTube channel. Keep your eye out. We're going to start posting fantasy PPR rankings for next year pretty much as soon as this season's over. Peace.
Later.